Day 3 with Russell Brand. See it first on Rumble.
You talked in our conversations offline about the seamless congealing of folklore and myth into conventional wisdom. How, I suppose, abstract ideas that are not underwritten by facts are starting to be used as platforms, foundations, and arguments, I guess, for escalated activity within this conflict. Can you give us some examples, or did you just give us one, i.e. the attempt to sort of label Russia a terrorist state? Are there further examples that have accrued around this conflict?
Yeah, and there are multiple dimensions to this phenomenon. And this being the first year anniversary of the invasion starting, or we're approaching that anyway, it's a good time to reflect on how this dynamic has worked discursively. So when Russia first launched the invasion, February 24th of last year, there was this instantaneous congealing of myth and folklore, as I would put it, around a sort of triumphalist narrative that showed the resilience and the resourcefulness and the heroism of Ukraine. And certainly in particular instances, there might have been cases that were legitimate of, individual Ukrainians displaying valor of some sort. That's not even what I'm commenting on here, because, the immediate counter argument will be, oh, you're trying to denigrate the sacrifices of Ukrainians and cheapen their suffering. No, I mean, I personally went to the
Why don't you care about them?
Yeah.
Get a sticker up in your window.
Well, no, I mean, actually, the reason why that rebuttal, or that theoretical rebuttal, is so cheap is because, an actually serious sort of moral assessment would have to take into account the genuine suffering of those Ukrainians who, through no fault of their own, actually have had their lives disrupted. When the war first started, I went to Poland on the border area with Ukraine, and I personally, without trying to get myself set up for interviews through NGOs or through some sort of fixer or through some sort of, orchestrated PR initiative, I actually personally interviewed lots of, mostly women with young children who did have their lives genuinely disrupted through as a result of an aggressive military action. And I think there is sympathy that is justly afforded to them. So, I think somebody who is a careful moral reasoner would have to take that into account. And so I'm taking that into account, but I'm also simultaneously noting that there was this onslaught of just propaganda and fabrication in service of advancing one particular triumphalist Ukraine narrative that was then arrogated for the purpose of intensifying a primarily U.S. military intervention. So I don't know if you recall, but within days of the invasion happening last February, there was this anecdote that got circulated and then just beamed across the entire information kind of landscape, where Zelensky was supposedly offered an evacuation route out of Ukraine by the United States, and he responded triumphantly and boldly and audaciously by saying, "I don't need ammo, I need a ride." And that became like this rallying cry, showing not just the valorous spirit of Zelensky, but of Ukraine as a whole. And T-shirts were immediately produced with this slogan, and it became sort of one of the kind of core tenets of this war mythos. And if you actually go and look at what that originated from, there was an AP story in late February that was sourced to an anonymous intelligence official. So nobody was willing to put their name to the conveyance of this, titanically inspiring quote. And that U.S. intelligence official is the one who relayed it, apparently, to the AP reporter. We still don't know who that intelligence official was. But as you might agree, U.S. intelligence officials have a variety of potential motives for why they would want to place information out for public consumption. And then by October, one of the very few instances of an actually sort of robust journalistic evaluation of the nature of the U.S. intervention in Ukraine was published in the New Yorker, and it quoted another official kind of laughingly acknowledging that entire anecdote, including the quote itself, presumably, was just a sheer fabrication for propagandistic purposes, which, if you're thinking about it from the standpoint of the self-interest of, or the perceived self-interest of whoever those Ukraine government officials might be, you can see why they would want that information out there to kind of construct this affirming kind of noble narrative on their behalf. Because what were they doing? Well, they were lobbying for more and more intense U.S./Western military escalation. Remember, at that time, Zelensky, despite being crowned as this, incarnation of Churchill and the most beloved leader that has graced the world stage since the Second World War, he was lobbying in March and April of last year for a no-fly zone, which even Joe Biden himself said, if that demand were actually acquiesced to, that would instigate World War III. And yet we were all being told that we must be, singing the praises of somebody whose preferred policy interventions would actually bring about the most cataclysmic world conflagration that anybody could ever dream of.
Stay free. See it first on Rumble.